Over the past 5 years, food trucks and street vendors has become one of the fastest growing industries in the country.
$10 digital.
In fact, in the past 2 years, the numbers have jumped more than 400%.
Restaurant owners have taken big bottom line hits since food trucks began proliferating downtown.
Complaints from restaurant owners who feel threatened by the trucks.
Cities are increasingly putting the brakes on street meat.
In 2009, food trucks arrived in Washington, D.C.
The media just went crazy over the first few food trucks.
On a good day, I could sell 700 cupcakes.
Controversy soon followed.
It's unfair competition.
They're taking our customers from us.
They're somewhat parasitic.
And the arguments kept heating up.
They're there just picking away sort of like the low-hanging fruit.
You can't be mad at innovation.
Oh, they hate the food trucks.
We're not putting a gun to people's head.
Food trucks are favored over brick and mortar stores.
Their whole idea is to destroy the competition.
The issue has become so prominent and so important and so in everybody's face.
And the council should have a hearing.
And politicians are caught in the middle of this food fight.
They're really good at igniting their customers.
Are you prepared to take the oath, Senator?
I am.
The Obama inauguration marked a political change in Washington, D.C.
I, Barack Hussein Obama.
But it also heralded a change in local food. The day Barack Obama took office was the same day former Obama campaign worker Justin Vitarello introduced the first gourmet food truck to the streets of Washington.
It was inauguration day for Barack Obama. It was the first day out for the Foggia brothers. I had 4 different outfits that I wore the first day, and my father was yelling at me, telling me how not, normal I was for doing this. But it was really to kind of bring people together all in the name of food, and to be outside, to utilize public space at the level that it deserves to be used.
Christy Whitfield opened one of the first food trucks in the city.
The cupcake truck started just as an idea, a thought that my husband had. He's a lawyer and he was working in a law firm, and colleagues wanted cupcakes, but nobody wanted to go to a cupcake shop. And he thought, cupcakes should come to the people. We shouldn't have to go to the cupcakes. And then he just sort of had a light bulb moment. And he said to me later, what do you think about a cupcake truck?
Farhad Asari abandoned a dream of a restaurant to be one of the first food truck owners in D.C., and it wasn't easy.
Well, I really didn't know that much about food trucks. What I wanted to do was open up a restaurant. And I went up to New York to visit a friend of mine. So she took me to a food truck and I was amazed. It was a food truck that was painted blue with clouds and a cow on it saying moo. The guy in the truck took a sirloin steak, put it in a grinder, ground it, made a patty, made me an amazing burger, and right there and then, I guess I decided I wanted to do food trucks instead of a restaurant.
But when food trucks rolled into the city, problems soon followed.
Oh yeah, I'm ready.
Adams Morgan is a popular neighborhood in Washington, D.C., north of the White House and Capitol building. Ariane Bennett owns the Amsterdam Falafel Shop.
We've been here for 7 years, here in Adams Morgan on 18th Street. There were a lot of restaurants, but there were a lot of restaurants that opened only at night. And so we were definitely pioneers during the day.
Regular wheat?
The Amsterdam Falafel Shop is a modest business. Ariane and her husband live upstairs.
Yay!
She described her first experience with a DC food truck.
We had the French fry truck, I think it was the Fry Captain, who came into Adams Morgan and parked just a couple of doors down from us to the left. Their French fry exhaust was venting directly into the front open windows of Venter Sports. The second thing that they did was end up blocking the sidewalk with their patrons. And then the third thing was they competed directly with us for the one of the 2 things that we sell in our restaurant. We sell French fries or falafel. That's it.
Small fry?
Restaurants have high costs and small profits, and some restaurant owners worried that food trucks could force them out of business.
What's going on today again is that you have this cake mobile vending truck parked literally in front of an established bakery. The established bakery is paying high rents, is paying a lot of employee benefits, it's paying a lot of inventory, and they don't need special protection, but they need to have their interests protected so they can stay successful and not go bankrupt.
Small fry.
Food trucks were a social media sensation.
Without Twitter, I'm not sure the food truck revolution would have happened. They rely on collecting followers and letting them know every day where they're going to be. And if they're moving, letting them know where they're moving.
The first day we were out with the truck, we went to 14th and K. There was a line of people, 50 people long. 57. So there's 17th and K, Farragut Square.
L'Enfant Plaza.
Franklin Square, McPherson Square. We go out by the Kennedy Center.
1 Mass Ave, which is right next to Union Station.
19th and L Street.
We go up to DuPont. We've been to 14th and U. We've been to Van Ness.
7th and Maryland.
We've been out to Minnesota Avenue in Ward 7. We go to the Big Chair.
We go around the West End a little bit.
We come to Eastern Market.
24th and M Street.
We've been to Columbia Heights. We've been to Adams Morgan.
21st and Virginia, which is where the State Department is.
Department of Homeland Security.
Pentagon City, Crystal City, Roslyn.
And American University.
Boston, Courthouse, Virginia Square.
Northeast.
Bethesda.
The St. Elizabeth's campus.
Rockville, Silver Spring.
The 311-911 call center.
You know, we've got 3 trucks and at least 3 stops a day. We're everywhere.
All right, that'd be nice. So it'll be 12. Milkshakes coming.
Many restaurant owners risked everything to start their businesses. But food truck owners and social media were game changers. The competition was now mobile.
When you're a restaurant, you're already operating on small margins. They have to pay rent, they have to pay 10% sales tax, they have to pay a business improvement district fees, they have to pay all these different fees. And then some food truck pulls up along the curb and suddenly, they see a drop in business and they feel frustrated.
Food truck owners heard the complaints, but like restaurant owners, many food truckers had also risked everything for their businesses.
The truck that I'm standing in front of cost $70,000.
Altogether, it cost me about $100,000.
Both of our families helped us. We put things on credit cards. We took money down off the home equity line. I mean, we cobbled it together.
Oh my God. I've risked my life more times than anyone ever even imagined. I've been on the side of highways. I've been in many states. I put all of my money into this. I put all of my heart into this. I work 20 hours a day, 7 days a week for 1,000 straight days.
This is our mortgage and our, food and our life, so it must work.
Oh, hey, thank you. Heck yeah.
Other DC restaurant owners were having similar problems. Building owners and neighborhood associations were also upset. But people loved food trucks.
These are the best fish tacos I've ever had.
All these diverse trucks, from Latin-inspired to Middle Eastern-inspired, dessert-inspired. The fusion is amazing.
Food trucks put the small in small business, but restaurants, building owners, and politicians were still worried. One food truck is nothing to be scared of, but scores of trucks can be frightening.
Well, right now there are about 300 mobile roadway trucks in the city. And what's happening, the city doesn't even know that because not all of them are even licensed because it's so much like the Wild West. It causes just a lot of emotional drama. I mean, the manager of that store is really upset because they feel they've lost business during that 90-minute lunch hour window. And so that causes hostility between a vending truck and an inline business, which is really unnecessary.
An adamant tavern owner who came out and literally was yelling at our customers and harassing my staff and pointing his finger and cursing. And then, it's just, and then he spit on the truck.
They come out of their restaurants and they start screaming at us. They call the police. They'll call the police and they'll, for example, say that this truck doesn't have a line and it's stopped. Or they'll call the police and say this truck has been there for longer than 2 hours at a parking meter. Any reason that they can find in order to get us, to move us from that location.
And it's not actually the fault of MPD. They have to respond to any calls they get. But restaurants and people that really are food truck, detractors, call the police on us all the time.
Some wondered if the food truck crackdown was the restaurants working behind the scenes.
A brick and mortar may just call up, someone that they know within the city and say, this truck is pulled up outside of my restaurant. They're killing my business. Can you do something? And suddenly, a policeman shows up and shuts them down.
The DC restaurant industry is a $2.5 billion business, employing 50,000 people in roughly 2,000 locations. Restaurants are a part of the city, and the industry has close ties with DC government.
No, we're pretty much in constant contact with the council members, the mayor's office, the health department, Alcoholic Beverage Control Board, Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs.
The city was getting calls about food truck trash, blocked sidewalks, and even patrons walking into restaurants and going to the bathroom. But overwhelmingly, the main source of conflict was parking meters.
Food trucks can locate anywhere in the District of Columbia, and the number of reviews that are required is 0.
If they're parked at a parking meter and they're paying the meter, or if they're legally parked, there's nothing we can do.
The brick and mortar businesses have a problem with it because these food trucks under this law are allowed to pull up into the parking space right in front of a business and do business from that parking space.
DC Council regulated food trucks under a strange old law.
The ice cream truck law is very simply a law that was put together for ice cream trucks that were in residential neighborhoods. What DC did was they took those exact laws and just made them into food truck laws.
And one of the interesting things about vending in Washington, D.C. is the trucks can only be 18.5 feet long. Well, they no longer make new 18-foot long step vans. They make 16-foot sprinters, and they jump up to 20 feet.
If you go to New York and see their food trucks, they're like Winnebagos. And in D.C., they're these tiny little things.
So imagine a 10,000-pound box truck full of commercial kitchen equipment is driving down K Street and somebody flags them down like a cab and they pull it over to serve them a taco. It can't blow up, but you have hot food, you have hot water.
If you don't have a customer that you're serving, you're supposed to shut your window and roll off. What other business in the city? Imagine saying to Starbucks, if there's nobody in your line, you have to shutter your doors and lock them and turn off the lights until somebody knocks and says, please, may I have a cup of coffee?
Kevin O'Connor thinks that even the police who enforce the ice cream truck law get confused by it.
I think you see a lot of crackdown from parking enforcement that unfairly tickets food trucks.
The city, the District of Columbia government, has been working on new street vendor regulations for years now, and they can't come to any agreement.
And the lack of new regulations made DC one of the fastest growing food truck markets in the United States.
I think that you're seeing such a huge explosion of them right now because we're one of the few territories on the East Coast and in fact throughout the country where we don't regulate as strongly as other people do. New York regulates much more strongly, and I've actually seen in print stories of people coming down to DC's market because the New York regulations are so strong.
Food trucks were giving DC a foodie reputation, and local eaters loved it. Restaurants and building owners were feeling unappreciated. These businesses pay an extra tax to keep the city safe and clean.
While the restaurants pay an extra tax to improve the city, DC's food trucks pay comparatively little for civic improvement.
There is legitimacy to the fact that, food trucks should have more ownership in the district and should be able to get more involved in community activities.
Critics say that food trucks hurt the city, and with more food trucks, there could be fewer restaurants.
Restaurants create communities. Food trucks don't create communities. If you look at 8th Street, if you look at 14th Street, you look at U Street, you look at Columbia Heights, it is the restaurants which created the community, which meant that there were jobs then in the community, there were reasons for additional people to move in because there were places to go.
You're not going to get another foodie in here because they're going to learn from what's going on with me that this is no longer a good food location because of the mobile food trucks.
Places that used to be thriving will no longer be thriving because they've been driven out of, those folks have been driven out of business by the food trucks.
Food trucks continued rushing into D.C., and restaurants, building owners, and neighborhoods kept pushing to change the law.
Well, they have influence and they have money, and those are two very powerful forces that get people to make decisions in your favor. They started to use the mechanisms that they had to complain. They went through their city council member, they went through the business improvement district, they went through the restaurant association.
In 2011, Councilwoman Yvette Alexander chaired the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs, which had oversight of food trucks.
When I first saw a food truck, I was in LA, and they had Fashion Week out there, and I just happened to be there. And I was on Rodeo Drive, and they had a line of these food trucks. And I mean, they were designer food trucks, and it just caught my eye. I said, what is this? Because we didn't have it in DC. And I thought it was trendy and hot. The number of trucks that they have out there, it's impossible for all of them in one day to locate in one particular area. And not only the restaurants and cafes are complaining, but some of the building owners say they can't even lease out space because of all of the traffic and commotion and litter.
DC officials looked at laws other cities had passed. One proposal was called vending development zones.
The vending development zones are going to be proposed locations where the food trucks can go. So it may not be 20 trucks in an area, maybe 10, and it won't be there every day, so that it'll give the restaurants an opportunity.
Some observers saw the influence of the $2.5 billion restaurant industry on the proposed new laws.
I think the brick and mortars would love to say, okay, they can only go to this spot. They park here, that's it. You can't just start roaming the city.
Similar scenarios were playing out across the country. Thousands and thousands of food trucks were all facing government pressure.
Food trucks across the country are just being besieged by crazy laws and regulations that are just frankly anti-competitive.
The food trucks here have so few rules and guidelines right now that it's been a great place for everybody to rush to and take advantage of that vacuum.
Food truck supporters sent letters, emails, and tweets to DC Council. In some U.S. cities, food truck owners sued governments. And in some cities, the food truck owners had won.
There have been lawsuits in other cities. Other cities have passed these regulations where they say, okay, you got a food truck, but you can't park it anywhere near a brick and mortar restaurant. And the other cities, there have been challenges to that law, and they have lost.
Gourmet food trucks started in Los Angeles in 2008. Now, Los Angeles was helping form food truck associations across the country.
There is an organizer from Los Angeles that has come in and helped them create the DC Food Truck Association, because LA was like ground zero for a lot of the big fights.
By organizing, we're seeing more and more food truck associations around the country just to try to have a seat at the table during these regulations discussions.
It started because of the regulations, because we were afraid. I mean, there's no other way to say it. We were afraid. Really, we came together in self-defense is really what happened, because we kept hearing about these efforts to kill the food trucks, and we all were like, hey, I'm Christy, they're trying to kill you too? Yeah, let's talk about it.
More than 40 food truck organizations started up. But in DC, creating the Food Truck Association was only step one.
And then we've recently actually engaged a lobbyist, because actually many city council people were like, who's your lobbyist?
Because I mean, the food truck owners, they're They're chefs, they're passionate people about food, they're business types. They're not necessarily politically savvy, and they've got themselves now into a political situation.
Food trucks have the most important thing in politics: people. They have an estimated 200,000 social media followers, and food trucks can send political messages to computers and cell phones.
If we believe that something unfair is being done, and our constituents or our followers are unhappy about it, we believe that that affects the electability of someone who's against us.
DC Council was now caught between the $2.5 billion DC restaurant industry and 200,000 passionate food truck followers.
So, we can risk losing, a lot of support and contributions based on the way that we see things or based on the way that we vote.
I think the city, by failing to nip it in the bud 2 years ago, I think DCRA created a Pandora's box for itself.
The lines in this food fight started to get blurry. Restaurants are starting food trucks, and food trucks are starting restaurants.
The situation is not getting better. In fact, it's getting more confusing.
My level of confidence on how this is going to resolve itself, in the short term, I have no confidence.
In fall of 2012, Mayor Vincent Gray proposed kicking food trucks out of the most popular locations in the city.
If you put that law into the regulations, that means that food trucks cannot park anywhere in downtown DC. I mean, that's basically what you're doing. You're basically telling us, go to the outskirts.
Food truck social media began lighting up with messages to tell Mayor Gray and DC Council to end the proposed regulations. In 2013, the Restaurant Association hit back. The Restaurant Association also began using social media as a political tool. While the regulation battle heated up in DC, the Food Truck Association expanded. Nearby communities welcomed the trucks. And food truck associations across the country joined in the DC food fight.
People have not weighed in on this one way or the other. It's been the industries.
That's the ultimate clash, is like brick and mortar money and power versus what the people want. Ultimately it is a democracy, and if enough people love it and embrace it, the city council will have to listen.
There's two ways people vote: at the ballot box and with their wallets. And this food truck fight is at the crosshairs. A dozen food trucks are planned for DC, and more will follow. This rise in DC food trucks and the lack of regulation have made this a capital food fight.
I mean, it's DC. We just have a problem making compromise.